From the snow-capped mountains of the west to the cypress swamps of the south and everywhere in between. This is the Southern Flight Podcast. I'm your host, Robbie Nelson. You are listening to the Southern Flight Podcast. I'm Robbie Nelson, and today's guest is Mr. Aaron Murphy. I've known Aaron for quite a while. It's been a little while since we've connected, but I've known him for years at this point, and I wanted to have him on today because he has a lot of insight into the timber industry, wildlife management, habitat management, and I feel like it's an important topic to me. I think it should be an important topic to any sportsman. And even if you're not a sportsman, I think that there's a lot of correlations you can gather from this. So, Aaron, let's just start with tell people who you are, what you do for a living, and we'll go from there.
Certainly. Yeah, so, of course, my name, again, Aaron Murphy. I born and raised Georgia boy, been here all my life. Lived in the swamps of Georgia all the way up to the uplands, hunted just about anywhere you can think of. That's where I started, being out in the woods, chasing, squirrels as a young age, hunting doves as a young boy with my granddaddy. And as I got older, I started to realize that, my love and my passion was going to be my life. And I wanted to be in the woods as much as I possibly could the remainder of my life. That's where I, found myself was in those woods. So, once I graduated from high school, I decided to actually got enrolled at Georgia Southern University, where I got a biology degree there at Georgia Southern University. Started out pre-med, which was a direction I'm glad I changed, to be quite honest with you, but ended up going down the wildlife lane. Found a lot of good professors there that, helped me spark that passion and really dive in deep into the wildlife side of things. During my time at Georgia Southern, I actually applied for a co-op position with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers out of the Savannah District, and got that position in the spring of 2008. I started out as a co-op student with them, working in the forestry, fish, and wildlife section. And what I did there pretty much was I assisted the project biologist in conducting, we did a number of wildlife surveys, did a lot of, duck. We actually did waterfowl and bald eagle surveys during the fall. Huh. We also did deer surveys as well, spotlight surveys, which is old school, of course. Now everybody does most everything by camera survey now. Right. But did that and worked in the shoreline section, worked recreation. I've worked in pretty much every section they have there at that project. And so did a semester on, semester off deal until I, of course, finished, graduated Georgia Southern University, my biology degree. Then went to work full time there for the Corps, and I stayed in the forestry, fish, and wildlife section. Well, during my time there, I had a excellent teacher. He was a forester, registered forester, and he basically taught me anything and everything there was to know about, working in the woods, how to measure trees, the art of managing trees, silviculture, those type things. I learned a lot from him there, and he really sparked my passion for the forestry side of things, because the way he pretty well taught me was, you can't have forestry without wildlife, and you can't have wildlife without forestry.
It's a great saying.
Yes, sir. And I lived to that this day. And so I actually ended up going back to school and got a master's in forest resources from the University of Georgia at Warnell.
Go Dogs.
Yes, sir. Go Dogs. And so I finished that degree, and lucky enough, when I finished that degree, the forester who was there at the project that I was working at decided to take a promotion. And so I actually came in as the project forester for J. Strom Thurmond project. So what that meant was I was basically taking over forest management implementation on about 70,000 acres of core land, public land.
Now, all of this land is around Clarksville?
That is correct.
Strom Thurmond Lake, as some of you know it, but most of us know it as Clarksville.
Yes, sir, that's correct. And so during that time, I did everything that you could possibly think of that had anything to do with managing timber. You know, our management objectives on government property are far different than those of the private landowner. You know, we're there to not only enhance the wildlife benefit of those lands, but also to help with water filtration, you know, ensure that we're managing our SMZs the way we should, you know, making sure that, you know, we're taking care of the land and putting it back better than it originally was before, you know, before.
Right.
So, got to do some really cool stuff. Actually went up to Maine for a period of time, managed timber up there, did some tree marking and that kind of stuff for the Corps, on a military installation up there. Gotten to do some really neat stuff with them. And, you know, during my time there with the Corps, in those early years of me and my forestry work, you know, I really wanted to do more than just work with public, you know, with the public sector of things. You know, I wanted to get in there and help private landowners also be able to accomplish their goals that they had for, you know, their wildlife management goals, their forest management goals, all those things that, you know, I held dear to my heart and held close. I wanted to help somebody else be able to achieve those things. So in 2015, I started my own consulting firm, started Big Creek Forestry and Wildlife Consulting. And started out very small, you know, had a few landowners here, 50, 100-acre tracts, you know, that I was helping landowners on. But I think just by word of mouth and, you know, having a great friendship group and, you know, being able to get out in the community and just, you know, let them know what my passion was and sharing that passion with them. I'm now grown, you know, to nearly probably about 5,000 to 10,000 acres that I manage on private lands. Of course, manage our own family lands as well. We have a few hundred acres that we manage as well. But my goal going forward is continue to grow my private business. I absolutely love working with private landowners. There's nothing else I'd rather do, you know, to see, you know, a young man who's just getting into hunting or something like that, be able to take his first buck, you know, seeing, and I know you mentioned this on podcast before, you know, previous to this, you know, seeing kids in the outdoors and seeing that spark in their eyes, you know, and
well, when you start getting to be our age, not that we're old, but we're not, both of us are getting a little gray in the muzzle, it looks like here. When you start getting our age, you know, you've already done so many of your firsts, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So to see a kid light up when he sees that 6-point buck that you or I would just go, and turn around. Yeah. You know, it kind of brings back the fire in you again.
No doubt.
It does to me. I mean, I've seen, matter of fact, my buddy from Jersey brings his son down here, and I take those guys deer hunting, and they, you know, to see the fire in the kid, like, makes it fire back in me again.
Oh, man. Yeah.
You know, it kinda,
does.
And the same thing could be said with duck hunting for me, you know, to take a kid, you know, I remember nowadays you go hunting and sometimes you take the simple things for granted.
Exactly.
You know, but now, you know, you take a kid and he sees 3 wood ducks and kills one and he's just a buzz, and it's like kind of brings you back home to, you know, this is what it really should be all about.
That's right.
You know, so
no doubt.
The kid thing is a real thing, I think, as you mature and get older.
Yeah, and you know, I mean, I've got 3 kids of my own, and have a little boy now who's now 6, and man, he's eating up with it. I mean, he wakes up daily asking me, "Daddy, when are we going to go to the woods and shoot a deer? You know, when are we going to go?" And he just wants to walk in the trees, man. And I mean, the passion that I see in his eyes, it rekindles it daily for me.
That's awesome.
Yeah, man, it's wonderful, and you know, I hope all sportsmen get to experience that in some way or another, you know, passing it down. I mean, that's always been, you know, the word, pass it down, do what you can to get 100%. Others involved.
Yeah. In a day, and I said this, I think on the last episode, or maybe 2 episodes ago, but in the day and age of screen time, man, I mean, these kids, especially like out here where I live and where you live, you know, we're a little bit more blessed because we live in the country, and, you know, you can get out and do these types of things, but you got a lot of these kids, man, that they can reach out and touch their neighbor's house almost. Exactly. You know, if the neighbor reached out, they could about touch their hand, and they grow up in a concrete jungle, man.
Yes, sir.
And they just don't see it. Their mom and dad, you know, may not care anything about hunting, may not know anything about it. So there's a lot of people out there that never get introduced to it that I guarantee you would love it.
Oh yeah, no
if
doubt.
they had the opportunity.
Definitely.
So, you know, it's a sad thing, and there might be a little bit more land conservation and stuff like
Correct.
that would be a little bit bigger topic if more people got involved in it, because a lot of people will see a block of woods and just go, you know, if they cut that down,
Yeah.
whatever, there could be a Starbucks there, and
That's
then I
right.
could go get me a cup of coffee. Where you
That's
and
right.
I look at that as like, man, I used to see a gobbler walking around that field edge right
Yes,
there,
sir.
right there where that parking lot is now. Or,
That's right.
And how many times can you say that?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, you and I talked a little bit the other day about these data centers.
Yes, sir.
You know, and we've got 2 that were approved within 20 minutes of where we're sitting right now.
Yes, sir.
And I know a guy that killed his first turkey on where one of those places are going. I've seen a bunch of deer run across the road right there, some hammers.
Oh,
and
yeah.
to think that all that's about to be a giant parking lot with big buildings on it is just,
Yes, sir.
I hate it. But I mean, I guess progress doesn't slow down for us. But.
That's right. And, you know, and one way I look at it too is, you know, when these opportunities of business moving into our areas, you know, one thing being, of course, our land costs are fairly low here in the Southeast, you know.
For now. They're getting,
For now.
they're almost pricing us out.
Yes, sir.
Local
You're right.
people.
They are. And so, you know, with that industry, the data centers and those type things, you know, we have to figure out how we can make not only the timber industry, but even the wildlife sector of things, how we can all make these things cohesive and work together. Now, granted, you put a data center on 2,500 acres, you're displacing wildlife.
Oh, there's no doubt.
There's nothing you can do to prevent that. You are going to be displacing wildlife. You are in some way or another going to affect runoff. There's a number of issues that can come from that. But, you know, what we need to do is look at areas specifically outside of those areas that we can put into conservation. Conservation easements being one of those things. You know, private landowners have taken advantage of that for a long time. You know, areas in the state where, you know, that are highly looked at for development opportunities and those type things. You know, those landowners can convert those lands into conservation easements, provide tax benefits to them in the long run. So, you know, more of those type activities, I think, you know, once we, you know, really it's just getting the word out there and promoting those type things.
And a lot of people, we had a conversation right before this started. I was telling you about the hurricane damage we had here. And granted, that's not necessarily the conservation you're talking about, but just these programs. People don't know that. A lot of people don't know these programs exist. I mean, you were telling me, I was telling you how much money it cost me to get this kind of cleaned up, and you're like, man, you know, we could have done this for you to help clean this stuff up, and I'm like, I didn't know.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, how do you know?
Exactly.
Yeah. So I don't know. I say before we get too far astray,
All right.
let's jump in, because it's all going to tie into this.
Correct.
So let's jump into the main reason, or one of the main reasons why you're here is the timber industry. And I have noticed the decline in the, you know, the international papers and that kind of stuff. So you told me something I didn't know the other day. I found real interesting that Georgia was the #1 timber harvesting state in the U.S. Is that correct?
We are the #1 timber industry state in the entire United States.
I had no idea. I mean, it makes sense. I guess I just grew up here, and you see planted pines everywhere you go. So it's just. I mean, when you grew up here, it's no big deal. But I did not realize that. So, but in a state where we are the #1, why are these businesses shuttering up?
Exactly.
I mean, how many have shuttered up in the last couple of years?
So just in the past year and a half alone, we're looking at 4.
Now, is that in Georgia?
That's in Georgia. That doesn't even count across the entire Southeastern United States. So what we're starting to see is the decline in our pulp and paper industry. And there's really, you know, the cause of this is the fact that, one, we grow trees too good. We really do. We grow trees at a higher rate than, you know, most anybody else in the entire U.S. can grow them. You know, pretty much for the past, I don't know, I'd say in in 2025, the calculations showed, and from the statistics that we gathered from our forest, that Georgia grows 53% more wood than we cut. 53%, 53% more wood than we cut.
So we've gotten really good at growing these pine trees.
We're too good at it. We're too good. And so what comes with that is you have an overabundance of product, of raw material. Well, these mills, their number one goal is to increase efficiency. You know, they want to improve their efficiency. That requires less raw material to come in through the back door of the mill, and out the front goes their end product. So they've, of course, improved their efficiency, and we're still growing timber at, at a high rate. So there's no lag there. And what it's just simple supply and demand is all it is. There's an oversupply of the product. The demand, of course, is coming down, so therefore your stumpage prices and everything else also reflect that. Another issue that we've run into as well is because forestry and growing timber has become such a global market, we are not able to compete with some of the not only labor costs, but their production costs that they have in these other countries. You know, in South America, Brazil, they grow eucalyptus on plantations. You can get a full rotation of eucalyptus in 15 years. So, it's really hard when their labor, of course, is only a small percentage of what ours would even be here. Then you've got also too, your end product, which is going to be a chip at the end of the day. Cost per capita is much lower on that product than we can produce here in the United States because of, we have labor regulations.
I was about to say, I'm sure they have a lot less regulations where they're coming from.
They most certainly do.
Some of which are probably not good for the environment,
They're not
I'm
good.
sure. Yeah.
Correct. I mean, you're talking about, basically the reduction in rainforest and a number of other things in the name of, production of plantation style timber stands.
Making money.
And so, it's really hard to compete with those. And, when you've got chips coming over on a barge from South America and, it's filling the ports of Savannah, filling the ports of Charleston, and we can't compete with that. Your domestic producers here in the United States, they're going to reap the destruction from that as well.
Right.
And a lot of that comes back to government regulation. What type of regulations are put in place to, protect our forest. I'm not going to say that they're necessarily overstepping their bounds, but, a lot of these companies are at the hand of the EU overseas, when they're putting their environmental regulations together and they're applying this across a worldwide stage, like take for instance, here recently, they just rolled back some of the EU regulations on our climate change perspectives. And so they rolled back the fact that what was happening was if you were clear cutting a forest stand and converting that to agriculture, they would not accept the materials that were coming off of that particular tract. These mills here locally would not accept that because it's not being managed in a sustainable manner. It's being converted to, row crops or whatever it may be. Well, to be quite honest, the land is staying in agricultural use. Timber is an agricultural product.
Right.
The same as growing corn, soybeans, whatever else it may be. And they viewed it as that land transitioning from agricultural use to development, whether it be industrial or whatever it may have been. And so therefore they weren't allowing the mills to take in that product. The mill couldn't sell that product worldwide. Over-regulation.
Welcome to America.
Yes, sir. So they've rolled back a lot of that regulation. I couldn't thank enough our governor and, our Georgia Forestry Association for helping, head up that effort. Tim Moore is a huge proponent of our industry, president there of the Georgia Forestry Association. I've had discussions with him here just in the past year, saying, there's got to be something we can do to improve this. I mean, with the stronghold that we have on the forest economy here in the United States, Georgia should be the leader in this. We should be the ones who are getting out there, putting the word out, and educating our public officials on what's going on, why are things going the way they're going, and what can we do to improve that. And so there's been some huge strides, really, just in the past 8 months, on making some real sound changes and regulation and pushing for those changes. And they're fighting the good fight, and I'm all for it.
It's good somebody's trying to do something about
Yes.
it instead of everybody just sitting on their hands.
Correct.
So to kind of recap a little bit there, I wrote down a question that says, why is demand down? But I think you pretty much answered that. It seems like demand is down because, number one, we're really good at growing trees, but even more so, they're importing a lot of this stuff.
Correct. They're importing a lot of the material, and and let's be quite honest too, Ron. I mean, we're a digital age. How many people are still printing on paper? You can't even get the Augusta Chronicle anymore.
That's
hardly,
right, unless it's right here.
Unless it's right there on that phone.
Unless it's right there, nobody does
So
that.
consumption of pulp and fiber has gone down considerably, and that's just a trend that's going to continue for the foreseeable future. There is some technology out there that I think is going to eventually take the place of that fiber and fuel consumption. We have biomass being a huge part of that. We have there's some really cool stuff coming out, with the technologies and producing aviation fuels with forest byproducts.
Oh, no kidding.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So
that'd be cool.
Yeah. So processing the biomass that comes off, whether it be residuals or straight just pulp chips that come off of a logging job, they can process those materials, whether it be through it's much like almost like making alcohol, fermentation, those type things, and being able to basically cook it down into a biofuel that's being produced and utilized in our aviation industry. So Georgia Tech has a program right now where they are developing aviation fuels with forest byproducts. So,
well, with as many, if you've ever looked at any of those flight tracker deals where all the planes that are in the air at one time, dude, if you think about how many are around the world in the air at one time, it'd be neat to be able to.
Oh, no doubt.
To use it from a renewable resource like a tree.
And that's, at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to, your carbon footprint. These industries, they've got to lighten their carbon footprint if they're going to compete worldwide, So part of that is utilizing a sustainable resource, which of course is timber. And so, with being able to produce those fuels and being able to utilize sustainable products from our forestry industry, that reduces their overall carbon footprint. I mean, shoot, now most of these companies now are buying carbon credits that come off of these lands for sequestering carbon in our trees. We're already doing it. We've been doing it for generations. Why not take advantage of that? So, there's being carbon markets have been around for, the past 20 years. And so they're doing nothing but improving their capabilities, improving the science behind it. And eventually I think it will get to a point where it will be another input for the forest landowner to be able to reap some benefits from growing their timber, not just cutting timber and, sending it out on a log truck.
Right. So not to try to be doom and gloom, but I think it's important for people to know, including myself, with the demand being down, with these mills shutting down, I think you said 4 just in the last year and a half.
Yeah.
4 mills shutting down, with all this stuff being done overseas and brought in. Obviously, that's going to start to have an effect on the land that we have in forestry practices right now. Because in my mind, if the demand is down, typically prices go down.
Correct.
If prices go down, why are people going to plant these trees and invest in this long-term deal that they're unsure of if it's going to even give them any return on their investment? Or if they could take that money that they'd buy this 1,000 acres with and plant this tree, the kind of people that's got the money to do that, if they don't see that return of investment there, they might could invest in the stock market or put it in, something else that they feel like is going to make them money. So what do you think that the timber industry kind of, I don't want to say failing, but changing with prices going down, demand going down, these mills shutting down? what does that mean for our forest? What
Correct.
does that mean for our wildlife? What does that mean for the future generations of landowners or potential landowners? Like, what does that look like if something doesn't change?
So let's be honest. I mean, if forest markets are not healthy, if a landowner cannot reap the benefits of growing a tree for say 15 to 18 years, and the first, they're getting the first thinning out of it by that time, if they're not going to be able to make money off of it, well, you're just going to say, you know what, I'll just hold off and I'll wait till things improve. Well, unfortunately, Mother Nature, she can be she can be rough. And you have pine beetles, you have wildfire, you have density induced, mortality that occurs due to these stands becoming overstocked. And what they end up doing is being just a festering time bomb for mass devastation in these stands.
So so I understand you're saying, like, if people don't do the proper thinnings and the forest gets too crowded, basically the forest gets sick.
Yes,
right?
It does.
Because they don't have room to grow out. They're too crowded in. Correct. And they just get sick.
Correct. They just get sick. And so, what happens is, all these landowners are, of course, foregoing doing their first thinnings because they're not making any money off of it. Timber prices are down. And not even timber prices down. We have nowhere to take it. Quota, pine pulpwood quota right now is absolutely in the crapper. I mean, we can't move the stuff. And so, even if we could move it, the prices themselves even would prevent some forest landowners from doing it. But right now, we don't have the prices and we don't have the ability to move it because of the loggers being on quota. So what you're going to see in wildlife habitat response to that is stands now are going to become overstocked. So which means you're going to have crown closure that will be prolonged periods over a stand's life, which means less light hitting the ground. And you know what that means.
That means no food on the ground, and a deer lives from about 0 to 4 feet.
Yes, sir.
0 to 5
sure
feet.
Does.
I mean, I know during the, fall, obviously you get your crop mass and whatnot that'll fall, but that's a very short time of the year.
Very short.
I mean, everybody thinks that, because it's during hunting season, acorns and oak trees are king, and they are that time of the year.
Correct.
Right?
That's right.
I mean, when a white oak's dropping, there's nowhere you'd rather be in the South than under a white oak tree.
Yes,
I mean, they'll walk right past the corn pile, to get
to
a white oak. But, in saying that, in these pine stands, and correct me if I'm wrong, I didn't go to school for this, but I am a hunter.
Yeah.
If you don't have light hitting the ground, you're not going to get any growth on the ground.
That's correct.
And it's hard for a deer to live off of pine needles,
exactly.
from what I've learned. So if they're not opening up this canopy, letting some sunlight get through, not only are the trees not healthy, but now you don't have the forage. You start to lose, once the timber gets up big, you start to lose bedding area.
Exactly.
So now your deer density can't be as thick. I'm sure it's not good for the turkeys. We know it's not good for quail. Yep. So I don't know. Just tell me your thoughts on it.
So, at the end of the day, I think we have a cultural change that's occurring within not only the timber industry, but within land ownership in general. We're finding other ways to gain benefit from that land other than just harvesting a tree. You got people, of course, who look at the wildlife benefits of it. They're wanting to hunt on it. They're wanting to recreate on it, ride UTVs. I know that's a big thing nowadays. People are opening up their lands to allow for UTVs to be, ridden out there. Horseback riding, all of these other aspects of land ownership that now people are really starting to dive into that were really driven by timber prices, back even 10 years ago. And so I think it's a good thing that people are starting to realize that, a forest is good for much more than just growing a tree. The wildlife benefits of it and the mental benefits of it for you as that individual who's going out there and taking part in, whether it be hunting or just recreating on the land itself, cases of depression and all. People who live around forest have lower cases of depression, have lower mental issues on as a whole, as a society, when you live around the forest than living, of course, in a concrete jungle.
Well, we're animals, man.
Yeah.
I mean, we really are.
Exactly.
And we connect with nature just in the same way any other animal would, in my mind.
That's exactly right.
I couldn't live in that concrete
I
jungle.
couldn't either.
Brother, I couldn't do it. There's almost too many people around me, and my nearest neighbor's a cow. You know,
That's right. Yeah.
There's almost too many people around me now, and I think you're, from a non-scientific standpoint, I think you're hitting the nail on the head as far as watching a piece of land, or growing a piece of land, morphing a piece of land rather, into something that benefits whatever it is you're into.
Correct.
Maybe you don't like to hunt, but you care about wildlife. Maybe you like to see more birds. Maybe your thing is going out and taking pictures of woodpeckers.
Exactly.
I know a lady right down the road that loves it.
Oh yeah.
And with the all the trees, of course, Helene, we can thank Helene for that.
Oh yeah.
But all the trees on Fort Gordon across the road over there that they cut, that was a lot of habitat for them.
It was.
For those woodpeckers and stuff those studies that they're running over there for those. Yeah, I mean, and that's not the government's fault that they had to take those trees down, because that was. But I mean, there's so many other things that, like you said, the forest can be used for, other than just growing a tree, cutting a tree, pulpwood, or making a sawboard out of it.
That's right, exactly. And so, you know, as our and in the life of a forest and what we're talking about and changes in our forest economy, this is just a blip in time that we're looking at right now. You know, and that's one of the things too I have to portray to my landowners who I manage for. You know, remember, we're dealing with something that has a rotation, a period of anywhere between 30 to 50 years in some cases, depending upon whatever your management objectives are, of course. And so you're not going to see changes daily when you go out there on these tracks, when we're implementing prescribed fire, when we're, you know, conducting thinnings, when we're doing timber stand improvement work, whatever that may be. You're not going to see those changes the next day. These are going to be changes that you're going to see over 5, 10 years on down the road. So you have to prepare your mind for that as well. And us as foresters, we've been prepared for this situation. We're highly innovative. We're able to squeeze a penny. I promise you. I mean, I know some foresters now who've been able to squeeze a penny since day one. I mean, drinking out of a McDonald's cup they probably had 10 years ago, you know, still turning it around. I mean, they can squeeze $1. So, and, you know, for the folks who are out there wondering if we're going to be able to make it through this, I have no doubt that we will. I think it's just going to take some time and some innovation to find that niche, to find where we need to fill that void that pulp and paper once held. You know, to say that our forest industry is one dimensional, they've found a weakness. There's no doubt. When you took that pulp and paper industry to the levels that it's at now, there is no doubt that they have found a weakness in our industry. But with that also comes our ability to find a strength where we can build upon, you know, a sector of our industry that will take that place. And so I think we're making excellent strides in that. I think the folks who are, you know, in our research institutions, even U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, U.S. Forest Service, all of our government entities, they're doing all they can to try to, you know, figure out what's the next step here. Where are we going next? And, you know, I think what I'm seeing and what's coming out of our industry is we're headed towards, you know, finding much more ecologically beneficial products to produce other than just pulp and paper. You know, we're really keying on the biomass aspect of this. Biochar. I don't know how much you know about biochar.
I don't know anything about it.
Okay, so biochar is a byproduct of the biomass industry, and it all comes from heating wood at different temperatures. You know, the higher you heat the temperature of wood, you know, you can get certain products out of it. The lower temperature you typically get your charcoals, your biochars, those type of stuff. Well, biochar is being utilized in agriculture for helping retain moisture in our soils. It's being, you know, able to help also stabilize soils. It's also able to sequester carbon, which in return is going into the carbon markets, and these entities are getting paid to store carbon within a biochar, piece of biochar, and it's all, you know, on a per ton basis, how they calculate those values and that kind of stuff. But there's some really neat stuff that's coming out of the forestry industry. I think that's going to really make us the leader in not only the environmental aspects of land management, you know, showing that we truly do care. I mean, I've said this before, you know, we were the environmental activists long before any of that ever got started. You know, we were the ones who were planting trees. We were the ones who were doing what it took to improve the landscape, you know. And, you know, we have come such a long way since that time. And our ability, we're putting more into the land now than we're ever taking off of it. And that has always been the goal of any steward, land steward.
Right. Leave it better than
Leave
how
it
you
better
found
than you found it. And so that's what we're doing. We're making those strides to do that. And I'm really proud of those in the industry who are, you know, going out there and just hitting it head on and just trying, you know, to get these things done, because there's a lot of people counting on them, man. I mean, there really is. I mean, I've heard stories of, I mean, some really sad stuff. I mean, truly sad stuff of landowners, you know, even after Hurricane Helene. After Hurricane Helene here in Georgia, our forestry industry pretty well collapsed.
I bet.
Yeah. I mean, overabundance of product.
You saw my place over a year later.
Yeah.
I mean, it's I can't imagine owning a large timber stand, something that maybe you have bought 30 years ago, planted those trees, and then all of a sudden one day overnight on a Thursday night, I think it was, it's gone. You know, it's just, it's terrible, but you know, there's nothing we can do about Mother Nature.
Correct.
So,
but one of the neat things I think, and this will go back to our wildlife, you know, the vast majority of our species here in the Southeast thrive off of early successional habitat. When I say early successional, I mean, you have a situation that comes along that is a restart per se.
Helene,
wildfire, whatever it may be. And you get these vast open areas now that have tons of sunlight hitting
a clear cut.
A clear cut.
The final cutting of trees, everybody freaks out with deer hunting.
They do.
And I love it.
Oh, man, I mean, it's wonderful.
Like the first year, you let that second year, buddy,
yes, sir.
You're going to have some deer.
Yes, sir. And one of the cool things about it is I've heard this from many loggers too, you know, be sitting up on a loader in the middle of the day and big buck come out, you know, just checking to see what's going on. And, you know, they harvest the buck right there off the loader machine.
Right,
you know?
right.
I mean, just crazy stuff. But the next few years, you're going to see what I believe to be, of course, an increase in your population levels. Recruitment is going to go through the roof for deer. Wild turkey, of course, are going to have plenty of nesting habitat. You know, you're going to see the numbers start to peak. But what's going to happen is after that 5 or 6 year period, it's going to start coming back down because your habitat quality is going to start to sort of lop off and start to decrease. Well, as foresters and land managers, what we should be doing is trying to manage those areas with the use of prescribed fire. I can never talk highly enough about prescribed fire. I don't care what anybody says. It is the cheapest form of land management that you have that has the highest impact upon the landscape, no doubt. If you can implement prescribed fire, I say that is what you should be doing across your tracts. And, you know, do it on a rotation, you know, say 2 or 3 years, you know, break your property up into blocks, work with a forester on that, you know, work with a wildlife professional on that. They were more than happy to help you. And we've got tons of them in our area that are super good at it.
It seems that, and I'm not a great turkey hunter. I've never, you know, claimed to be, but it seems like a turkey loves a freshly burnt stand of pines.
Oh, timber. Man, brother. They'll in it while the smoke's still rising.
Yeah, it seems like they love a freshly burnt, you know.
They do. And that's when a lot of my landowners are contacting me, say, hey, you know, it's getting ready to be turkey season pretty soon. Maybe we should put a fire through this. And, you know, we'll work it out, work with Georgia Forestry Commission. They come in, put brakes, you know, or landowner has the ability to already put the brakes in themselves. I'll come in and, you know, put the burn down for them. And next thing I know, I'm getting a picture of a turkey up in the morning, right there in the black.
And so, I'm assuming too that, you know, when you do these burns like that, when that growth comes back up during that summer, that gives the deer a lot of browse and stuff on all that fresh growth. So you're just helping them by doing that.
Exactly. And, you know, and one of the cool things, you know, or one of the neat things about our forest is our forest has the capability to produce all the nutrients that a deer needs in order to maximize its ability to grow. All it needs is the nutrients and age. Those are the two main components of that. Well, when you produce, or when you know, put a prescribed fire out across the landscape, you're restarting that to zero. and bringing it back, all new growth, all highly nutrient dense, you know, products that are out there for those deer to be able to feed upon, forbs, grasses, legumes, all these things that these deer are going to benefit from. I mean, most people can't stand the sweet gum. Well, the sweet gum stump has the ability to produce 18% protein off of one single stump.
No kidding.
Yes, sir.
I did not know that.
There is benefit.
Fun fact of the day,
yes,
guys.
Sir. Fun fact. So they can produce up to 18% protein off of one sweet gum stump off of a harvest. Now, you know, you burn that on a 3-year rotation, that restarts that stump and puts it in that 4-foot range for that deer to be able to, forage.
So what you're saying is they'll eat on those leaves when they're young and tender.
Yes, sir.
So that spring growth.
Correct.
Basically spring, early summer, when honestly, the protein really matters for the rats.
That's it.
You know, everybody wants to feed protein during September, October. Well, that's great. But the racks are done growing, dude.
Exactly. They're
like,
done.
You know, when those racks are falling off, like right now, a lot of them are probably already gone. But like right now, they're starting from now until that rack, you know, mid to late summer is probably the most important time for that.
100%. That is 100%. So, you know, if you're going to be doing any type of supplemental feeding and those type things, you know, you typically look for those periods when bucks are putting on antler, but also does are you're producing fawns. You know, our next year's buck is based upon the health of that deer herd. And if a doe is in pitiful shape coming out of, you know, rut or coming out of the winter when, you know, most of the acorns have been already fed upon, they're gone. You know, there's no browse left because most of it's either gotten gone or it's gone into dormancy.
Yeah, they're on the struggle bus like right now.
They're on the struggle bus. And so inside of them has got a young buck that's growing. You know, the health of that doe is going to determine the end expression of that buck and how he turns out in the next 5.5, 6.5 years.
Isn't that wild?
And it's crazy.
Yeah,
it truly is. And so that's what a lot of research now is centered around, you know, improving the overall health of the herd as a total, not just targeting your bucks and trying to get them, you know, to necessarily grow the biggest and the best that they can be, but improve the overall herd health. You know, that's what your National Deer Association is really targeting now, is the overall deer herd itself, improving the overall, you know, the nutrient load that's out there across the landscape, but of course managing your deer into later age. You know, the day of, you know, shooting 3.5-year-old bucks is one of those that, you know, people still do it to this day. But I can tell you right now, if you go to a hunter now, they are being a lot more selective now about the deer that they're harvesting than say they would have been back 20 years ago.
100%. Me included.
Yeah.
So some of that has got to do with, I think, maturity and age on my behalf. I can't speak for everybody.
Yeah.
And some people hunt for their own reasons, right? I mean, some people just, they don't care. They hunt for food, and that's fine. I just don't want them as my neighbor.
Yeah, that's right.
but I mean, that's fine. Everybody hunt for their own reason. But yeah, letting those deer, it's amazing what you see when you don't shoot the first thing that walks out.
Yeah, man.
Really, and you learn so much by not shooting any animal.
Exactly.
Any animal, but like most of the time now when I go hunting, I pretty much know I'm not going to shoot anything.
Yeah.
But I like to see how the deer react, see how they act, where they come from. You start to learn a lot more when you're not pulling the trigger.
No doubt.
You learn a lot more by not pulling the trigger than you do by pulling the trigger.
Exactly.
So
yeah, there's no doubt. And you know, I know people cuss trail cams and all a lot these days because, you know, you're bringing all this technology into the deer hunting world, but I'm going to be honest, I think that's also led to our deer herd's overall improvement over this period of time. You know, you got hunters now who are saying, well, you know, I saw that 4.5-year-old on camera. He was out here just the other day, and the 3.5-year-old walks out and says, I think I'm going to let him go. Well, there is a pretty high chance that deer is going to make it into the next age class. And so trail cams, as much as people have to say about them, the bad, the good, whatever it may be, I personally believe they've been for the better.
Well, I can't speak from a educational standpoint like you can, but from the old redneck standpoint, I can tell you that it has saved a lot of deer from me.
Yeah.
Honestly, like right back here behind, right where you're sitting. I mean, I don't have a ton of land right here, but I'm in a good spot. And being able to know that that buck's there.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, I hadn't seen him in 3 weeks, but I had a picture of him, and it was during the daytime. Well, when Ruck comes, he'll be back. You know, so then I get fixated on that deer, and I'm like, you know, I think that's a 5.5-year-old deer.
Yes, sir.
So then you even start maybe letting the 4-year-old go.
Exactly.
And like, well, he's a pretty 4-year-old, but man, this other one's real nice, and I've only got 2 tags, and if I burn that, then
yeah,
you when you kind of start thinking like that, I agree with you. I think that trail cameras, they let you know that the deer are a hell of a lot smarter than we thought they were.
Yes, sir.
Because,
there's no doubt.
Because and without them, you would have never known half of these deer were even existed. Right?
Exactly.
So you'd be shooting that 3.5-year-old. Well, that's the only one that's on my property, so I'm going to shoot him. So I agree. I think that from that standpoint, it has definitely made me a more selective hunter.
Exactly.
For sure.
Yeah, and I mean, I can't even begin to tell you what it's done for me and my hunting style and the way it's changed things for me, you know. I mean, before cell cameras, I'm not going to lie to you. If it was brown, it's probably going down.
Well, when I was a kid up until probably, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago, I wasn't far behind you, brother.
I mean, I ain't gonna lie, you know, me and you got a mutual buddy. Me and him would stack the back of a pickup truck in a minute.
I've seen the pictures.
Yeah.
Hey, matter of fact, I've been a part of some of that stacking at the back of the pickup truck on his father-in-law's place back in the day. I know exactly who you're talking about.
Yeah, man. But just in the past few years, we've noticed a huge difference just in our deer herd where we hunt. And I was blessed. Back about 3 years ago, I killed a 154 and 3/8.
I knew you did. I wasn't going to bring that up because I didn't know if you wanted to talk about it.
No, that's fine.
But in saying that, that was a gorgeous deer.
Thank you.
I saw it especially for a Georgia deer. All of y'all that are listening to this that are in Georgia know how big a 154-inch deer is, especially when you get out of the suburbs of Atlanta.
Yes, sir.
And I'm not knocking those guys, but I'm just saying, a big woods deer, 154-inch in Georgia is a feat.
Yes, sir.
I mean, I don't care where you're at. That's a feat. But it does seem to be that it's becoming more common.
There's no doubt.
And it may be because of these trail cameras. In part, people know that they're there, so they're being more selective. But anyway, I didn't mean to cut into your story about the 154-inch, so go ahead.
No, so, you know, that particular deer, me and my neighbors, we pretty much put a co-op together. We've got around, I'd imagine it's probably around 3,000 acres in all, that we've got there right around us, that everybody has got the same idea as far as management goes.
Isn't that a beautiful thing?
Oh my gosh, it's wonderful.
It's a beautiful thing when you can get everybody on the same page.
Yeah, it don't get any better. And so one of my neighbors, they'd been getting pictures of this deer for a while. We'd been watching him. They got a picture of him in early summer in full velvet, and the deer just blew up. I mean, he went from he was probably pushing 140, and he went straight to that 150 mark. I mean, put 10 inches on. Now, granted, I'm not going to, lie. We do have an extensive feed program that we have. Not necessarily.
Well, with you being in the business that you're in, I wouldn't think any different.
Yeah, exactly. We do a lot of native habitat work. Prescribed fire, it lives in our forest. It does not ever come out. I mean, it is on a healthy rotation. We've been doing it now for probably close to 15 years. And my neighbors do the same thing, I mean, they're all doing the same stuff. And so when this deer finally showed up, we share pictures, as any other hunter does with anybody else they hunt with, and we're sharing pictures. And, they sent me this picture, and I'm like, oh man, this is a stud.
Now, did you know the deer from the years prior?
I had the deer pass through 1 or 2 times through the property. He didn't like to stay.
So he didn't really live on your place.
He did not live on my place. He didn't live there. We knew where he lived. We know where about most all of them live, but this particular deer, he was not living on the property, but he was starting to get in that nomadic state where he was venturing out. He was going to find that first doe that was in estrus. In the particular area where I hunt, they got it on the map, in the GON maps, rut maps of being, right there, middle of October. Our deer, because of the age structure that we're carrying and that we're managing for, as well as our buck to doe ratio, we carry a 1-to-1 ratio.
Okay.
Down there where we are. And so it typically falls in your historical time frame of rut activity being that early part of November. Well, I was just blessed to be set up on this deer. He came out chasing doe 10 yards, and I've got a rifle in hand. And I'm like, man, there's no way I'm going to be able to get a shot on this deer. Thank God, all I did was when he came out of them trees, I saw a rack, and I knew it was that deer.
Don't you love it when that happens?
Oh, man.
You don't even have to think
You don't
about
even have to think about it. And it's best I didn't, because if I did, I was going to miss it. So he come out chasing that doe. He cut hard out across the pine stand and went to a food plot. And when he made that turn, I let him have it. And he's so jacked up, man, he ran off. And I was like, oh, my gosh, I missed this deer. I mean, I could thrown up. I was so sick.
Yeah.
But got down, went to looking, and looked just in off the edge of the food plot where he cut across. And I saw that white belly, and I said, oh, my goodness. And I can't even begin to explain the feeling when I walked up on that deer, because, you know, we had put in so much work and so much effort into growing that type of deer down on that place, and for it to eventually become
pay off, come to fruition.
I mean,
for you.
it almost bring a tear to your eye, because you just put so much time and so much work into it, and the love for it. You know, I mean, I love deer hunting. I absolutely love it. I mean, that's what I live for, between that and turkeys, chasing turkeys. But to see the hard work, the pay dirt that you put in to being able to grow an animal like that, at the end of the day, for me, that's what it's all about. And, you know, as you and I talked about transitioning and, you know, in our life of hunting, I'm going now from this, a taker, to being a provider, a grower. I want to be there to grow the wildlife and see.
Let's grow the biggest buck possible, get him to his oldest, you know, where he's at his peak.
Exactly. And, you know, and I understand those life stages. I'm going to have a little boy who's going to want to go out there and just waylay some deer. But I think there's an opportunity still for those kids to do that, you know, whether it be through doe management, harvesting does and that type of stuff, whether you identify a buck who's 6.5 years old and he ain't never going to be anything more other than an 8-pointer, you know, those kids, just being able to be in a deer stand and see deer, see activity.
We'll keep it exciting.
We'll keep it exciting. And so, you know, that's what I'm looking at it from that perspective now, is I've started to make that turn and starting to do things now that aren't only beneficial to me, but I'm really looking to benefit my kids in the next generation.
Right.
Exactly.
Which goes back to, like you said, it's a generational thing. I mean,
it is.
It takes 30, 40, 50 years sometimes. So to not try to get too far off the topic for the timber industry, but I do know that the wildlife consultant is part of what you do.
Yes, sir.
So you're also, in your personal business, you're trying to help guys grow these deer, that the guys that are interested in doing that.
That's correct.
So your land that you're talking about, that you've put all this effort into over these years to grow that 154-inch deer.
Yes, sir.
What are some of the things that you've done that maybe a landowner that might be listening to this? Yeah. We've talked about burns, obviously, so we know that. But, like, what are some other things that you think are important? You talked about 1-to-1 ratio. I think, and I am bad about this, because growing up I felt like I didn't see as many. I have a hard time making myself shoot does.
Exactly.
I'll say that again. I have a hard time making myself shoot does. And there'd be times I'll go out and I'll see 15, 16, 17 does. And you might see 2 or 3 bucks. And you know, I know the bucks are more skittish than does. I get all that. But you know that you're lopsided.
Exactly.
And you know you need to be shooting some of those. And it's so hard for me to go, if I shoot this deer now, that big buck, he could be right inside those woods. And I am terrible about doing that, about not shooting. But what are some things you think that people could do, just, you know, to try to make their property better? We know not every property is going to grow 150-inch deer.
That's right.
You have to be in a good place that's got good genetics with good neighbors.
That's correct.
That's all kind of doing the same thing to try to do that. But you can still improve whatever deer herd that you have on no matter what size property you have.
Exactly.
For instance, I've got this small tract. I live on 20 acres here. I'm surrounded by big landowners, though, that all manage.
Correct.
And you know, and they're not shooting little deer. And so that helps me. So what I do is I try to make my place as attractive as I can to hold those does, knowing that if you don't sit there and mess with my does, which goes back again, that's my candy, for the buck. And typically it works out
Yeah.
for me. I'll typically have one come slipping through.
Mhm.
I might not know he even exists until about the middle of October,
Exactly.
but they'll start slipping off like you talking about that nomadic
Yes,
deal.
sir.
And then, they'll slip up and get got.
They will.
Every once in a while.
They will. And that's one of the cool things too that I've found with managing for different landowners is, if you're just wanting to see deer numbers and those type things, man, there's so much you can do to increase the overall carrying capacity of your property. Like we mentioned before, burning and that type stuff. But I mean, you can do, of course, supplemental feeding and those type things. We, in our particular management scheme, we do not utilize supplemental feeding. I actually don't even utilize corn.
Okay.
All of this is off of native browse. All of this is off of, our food plot program, of course, that we utilize on our property. Not to say that anything is wrong with that, because corn, let's be honest, there are a lot of times other folks are seeing deer when I am not seeing deer. But at the end of the day, for me, it's longevity. What can I provide those deer over the entirety of the year, rather than just going out and pouring a corn pile in the fall and providing them that? So I'm working on things like that, whether it's managing invasive species, going out with a bottle of Garlon or a bottle of glyphosate and doing hack and squirt treatments on stuff like privet, honeysuckle. I mean, I know those are all things that deer are feeding upon, but they are taking the place of native browse that are made to be able to occupy those areas of our landscape that deer typically utilize and provide much more nutritional benefit than any of these invasive species do. So, let's talk about TSI work. You've got a number of things you can do. You can do hack and squirt, which is typically done with an axe or a machete, whatever it may be. Got you a bottle of, let's say, 51% glyphosate or something like that. Peel back that bark, hit it with some glyphosate right there in that cut. Work your way around that tree. Girdling is another one. People utilize girdling, which is basically severing the cambium layer that's around that tree that carries, all of the nutrients, water, that type of stuff. You can do supplemental plantings. I mean, I've planted for a number of landowners, hard mass producing trees, soft mass producing. This is all stuff that's going to take time.
Right.
Of course,
there's no overnight success story.
Not at all.
But I mean, it is what it is.
That's right.
I mean,
it's
an investment,
exactly,
in your future.
And see, what I typically do in my landowners is I look at, the typical range of a white-tailed deer is around anywhere between 1,500 to 2,000 acres. I'll look within that circle and see what are these other landowners providing to them that I can stand out. I can be that one that maybe there's all this bedding habitat over there. Maybe there's all this dense cover that's over here, but maybe I can be the one to provide that food, that quality. And I mean, let's be quite honest too. Deer are determined by what their stomach wants.
Right.
They're going where the food is. So, this last year that was extremely hard to contend with because you had an acorn crop that was of epic proportions this past year. We were basically, you still got acorns on the ground now that were produced from this last fall,
right,
this last drop. So you can't really contend with those type things. But
next year could be a lean year.
Next year could be a lean year. Exactly. But winter disking is another thing that you can do. Typically this time of year, of course, you can go and turn that first 2 inches of soil out there and you'll get a response from that, in native browse, typically in, forbs and, legumes that are highly beneficial to not only deer, but turkey, for bugging habitat, those type things. Quail, of course, all benefit from these things. So, and if you don't have a tractor, you don't have, equipment to go out and do these things, even if you don't have the money to go and do these things, I mean, you can go out with a bow saw and do a whole heck of a lot of work. You can go buy a bottle of a herbicide at your local Lowe's, $15-20 and get ample amount of benefit from utilizing those materials, and those chemicals out there on the landscape. So, Anything is better than nothing.
Well, what they say, you eat an elephant one bite at a
You
time.
do. You
So
do.
you got to kind of start somewhere.
Yes, sir.
Well, I know that I don't know if you even remember this, but years and years and years ago, I actually went with you down to that piece of property.
Yeah.
I believe you're talking about, and I bet it's changed a lot since the
has.
time I've been down there as
It
far
has.
as what you've done to it. I mean, it was a beautiful piece back then. But
Yeah.
anyway, I'm glad to hear that all that hard work is paid off for
It
you
is.
out there, and now you're helping other landowners do the same thing.
Correct.
And like you said, it's not an overnight deal, but if you want to have that if you want to have the habitat there long term, you got to start somewhere.
You do.
You got to start somewhere. So to kind of hop back into the timber industry before we wrap up here, I know you said earlier about the biomass and the things that you think we're going to need to kind of gear back towards, but if something doesn't happen here with the timber industry kind of going down, I kind of touched a little bit earlier about I feel like these guys would invest money somewhere else.
Correct.
I mean, do you think that if something doesn't change, like if the legislation doesn't change to help, and it seems like they're working on it, but if things don't change, what are going to be the negative impacts it's going to have on the future generations of forest is what I'm saying.
So we've experienced this same situation in the Northeast, and what oftentimes leads to collapses in your forest market is finding higher, better uses for that land, and typically that's in development or some other form of growth at a larger scale than most of us can anticipate. And so the overall health of our forestry industry really, in all quite honesty, depends, our wildlife depend upon that industry thriving in order to be able to support what they need in their habitat. Because, it benefits us as foresters to thin our timber, to open up those forest stands, to allow for diameter growth to occur. Diameter growth puts us in higher product classes, which means more money to the landowner at the end of the day. That pulpwood tree goes to chip and saw, then to saw timber, then let's say it even gets to veneer grade or even pole quality. Those are the products that we're striving for. We're trying to move those on up through, through the gamut of products that we have. And the only way you can do that is continue to enter those stands at certain points in time through thinning, through timber stand improvement projects, all of those things. And so with those projects and with those entrances into the stand come disturbance. Wildlife thrive upon disturbance. They all go hand in hand with each other. All of these, rely upon each other in order to make these things happen. So if our forestry industry doesn't make a turn here soon and things don't start getting better, you are going to start to see degradation occur within our wildlife habitat. And
that's what I'm afraid of.
Yeah. And I'm going to be completely and totally honest with you. There's not enough government money out there to give you in subsidies or anything else to turn that around. Because at the scale at which we're operating at, you can only do so much. You can only pour so much into it until you need the private sector to take over. You need the markets to respond, to support those activities in order to make sense of doing these things. Because I can tell you, I actually have brought it up to a few landowners. I'm like, I can get a logger in here now, but you're going to have to pay them. Well, you tell a private landowner who's grown this timber for 18 years, may have $250, $300 an acre invested in it, and then you tell them they're going to have to turn around and pay out again to have a forest stand thinned, it ain't going to work. And so, there are literally landowners who have told me, I'd rather watch the bugs eat it than sell it for $2 a ton. Now that says a lot right there.
That does say a lot.
You're willing to sit there and watch your timber stand absolutely be destroyed by beetles in order to not get the $2 in that.
Yeah, because once the beetles take over, it's worthless.
It's worthless. It's no good. Because if you got beetles, everybody else got beetles. It's not only your problem, it's everybody else's problem. So, we have to have healthy forest markets in order to support our wildlife objectives. And, if we don't do it, Mother Nature will do it, but she'll do it at a far different scale than we can ever imagine. We just saw it with Hurricane Helene.
Right.
Could you imagine wildfires ripping through here like they've got out west? I mean, could you imagine that?
I can't, but I don't want to. I
No.
guess I could, but I don't want to think about that. But if the beetles come through, kill the trees, they don't do anything about it. We have a dry summer.
Yes, sir.
Something like that. A fire gets started, whether it be lightning, whether it be somebody flicking a cigarette butt out the window,
Just
whether it be
spark away.
whatever. I guess do we not, and this is an honest question because I don't know, do we typically not get as many wildfires here because it's a wetter climate, or do we typically not get as many here because the forestry practices?
The forest management.
Because you hear about places like Oregon, California, that the government won't let them cut the trees and won't let them do this, and then they just get burned up by wildfire anyway.
Yeah, because their forests are so tied up in environmental regulation. I mean, there's so much red tape there, it'd take years to peel it away to be able to enter those stands. So we here in the southeastern United States have always had an active role in managing our forest, whether it be not only through, I mean, back in the day when the pulp and paper industry was, just getting going, they would light fires and let them burn for thousands of acres to reduce that understory. That's one of the reasons too, I think we see a decline in our turkey population, is because we're not doing near as much burning as we used to. These companies used to own thousands upon thousands of acres. They'd light a match and let it burn because they owned everything between here, there, and yonder. And
so
they
it
just
didn't
let it
matter.
burn. Didn't matter. So now you don't have that. Now you've got, fragmentation of properties that have been broken up through just ages of families, separating lands.
Paul had 1,000 acres and left everybody 250, and then she sold 125, and he sold. Yeah,
that's it, and that's what's happening. And so, fire, of course, everybody's worries it's a big liability, but there are measures in place that protect prescribed burners that are here in the state of Georgia. Georgia alone has a number of regulations in place that protect you as a landowner. You go through the process of getting the fire breaks put in. You go and you get the permit like you're supposed to. You have a written prescribed fire plan put together that lays out your firing activities for the day and those type things. Those are all your insurance as a landowner to be able to conduct prescribed fire in this state. And so, a lot of people just, they worry so much about, oh man, what's going to happen? Oh, what if smoke gets somewhere, whatever else. My thing is this: are you willing to sit back and allow those forest stands and that habitat to continue to degrade because you're worried about what your neighbor may say, or you're worried about, because the state has put things in place to protect you to be able to do that activity. Right. They want you to do those things. As a private landowner and responsible landowner, you should be doing those things. But because now there's such a great fear in, applying prescribed fire across the landscape, a lot of people just say, well, it's not going to do it.
They don't want to be sued by the neighbor if it jumps across onto their place.
Exactly.
Or something like. But I mean, the fire, it seems like you said earlier, is the cheapest way to. It helps the forest. It helps the wildlife. It helps everything.
Certainly does.
So
Certainly.
if you're able to do that and you have the right kind of timber for that, or the location for that, then, obviously it sounds like people need to be doing it.
Exactly. They most certainly do.
And you're right. You see it a little bit more out here where I'm at. A lot of it's because we have 60,000 acres across the road over there that's government owned.
Yes,
and, they burn a lot. And there's some other large landowners just right around here that burn. But again, they're all large landowners.
Correct.
You typically aren't seeing the guy with 50 acres burning.
That's right.
I'm sure they do, but you don't see it that much.
No, sir, you don't.
Yeah, most of the time, if you see somebody burning out here, it's hundreds and hundreds of acres.
Correct.
And in the southeast anymore, it's almost rare to have anybody that has hundreds and hundreds of acres.
No doubt.
Maybe when you get in some of the southern counties, but I mean, hell, you can't afford 200 acres around here.
Exactly.
Anymore. I mean,
you can't.
Or even where you live up there. I mean, the land. Yeah. If you could afford that, we'd be private jet money.
Right. That's
but
right.
yeah, I mean, a lot of people don't have that. So I guess it's, I guess there's just it sounds like there's a lot of changes that have gone on, and that the industry has to catch up with these changes.
Correct.
So hopefully they'll do that.
Yeah.
Before we get off of here, is there any last point you'd like to drive home, or any message you'd like to send?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think people are so accustomed to seeing a log truck drive down the road with a load of logs on it. They're just accustomed to seeing it. But if we don't start doing something to help that industry, there will come a day where you will not see a log truck drive down the road. You will not see, log trucks entering highway signs anymore. You won't see that plume of smoke, coming up from down there in Augusta, there at the paper mill. The impacts that we will feel from the loss of this industry will go far beyond anything we could ever imagine. I mean, you're talking about a product that not only in structural housing, and building and those type things, but I mean, the fluff's coming to be put in baby diapers, cosmetics. Women are using it in mascara and all these other products. I mean, forest products are literally used in every single aspect of our lives. And for people not to understand the implications of losing an industry such as that, I don't ever want to see a day when that comes. I really don't.
Yeah.
And, we strive ourselves upon being the number one industry in the state. We're the number one forestry state in the nation. And to continue for us to compete for that role, we're going to have to make some serious changes. We're just going to have to do it. And it's going to be painful. I mean, I'm going to be quite honest with you. It's going to be painful. We're feeling the pain now. I mean, just in the past few months, I know of at least 12 logging companies that have sent people home to never return. I mean, you're talking about people's livelihoods, most of these guys were raising their kids in the woods, working on a skidder and, running a feller buncher. And now the rug's been pulled out from under them. Where do they go? What do they do?
Yeah, that's sad, man.
It is. And, I get emotional about it because not only do I love it, but I've built some friendships over the years with these guys, just salt of the earth people, man.
Right, yeah.
I mean, just people that give their shirt off their back just to see you be able to make it another day, knowing they're not going to make it the next.
Right.
And, we owe it to them. We do. We owe it to them to continue the push, continue the fight, to bring this industry to a place where it needs to be and continue to be number one in the nation. And I'm all for that fight, and I know there's others out there who are for it too.
Right.
And I think even as sportsmen, as land stewards, even if you're only seeing, a logging crew show up maybe once in your lifetime, it's worth your effort to put that fight up.
Right.
It's worth it. And we need to continue to push the importance of good, sustainable forest management, because it not only supports the trees, it supports our wildlife, it supports water quality. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you, these data centers up here would not be possible if it were not for your forest landscape. It would not be possible, because they're going to be the ones that are filtering all of those water, all that runoff that comes off of those areas. They're going to be supporting the wildlife that have now been displaced due to those. But there's an excellent opportunity there as well, because we have the ability to provide power through biomass, provide other products, the biochar, even for the chicken industry. They're utilizing it now in the chicken industry for, and putting it in all these chicken houses and all that kind of stuff. We're there. We're just sitting in the wings waiting for an opportunity. Let us do it. Let us, provide that green power. Let us do those things that, everybody's sitting around wondering how we're going to make this happen. We have the answer. The answer's right in front of you. Just let the forestry industry take it over, and we've got this. So, for those who are listening, just continue to, if you can, show up to your landowner association meetings. Georgia Forestry Commission is putting on an event. Go up and support those guys. One of the big things right now with the Georgia Forestry Association is getting out in the community and listening to the people who are there within the communities and trying to understand what is it that you're looking for, and being able to make sense of owning this land in the future. Because if you can't make sense of it, it's gone.
It's gone.
It's gone.
You got to have a monetary value on something to save anything. And it's sad that it's like that, but it's just how it is. If something's not worth any money, then people are not going to conserve it.
They will not.
I mean, I'm not saying it's right. It's just the way the world is.
It's fact. Exactly. Yeah. So just keep fighting the good fight, man. That's all I can say. Get out there and support the industry. Log truck drives by. I always tell my little boy this: stick his finger out the window and give him the thumbs up. Man, let them know they're being supported. It's just things just as simple as that. Because a lot of these guys, they wear their heart on their shoulder, man. They walk around. They love it. That is in their blood to do this.
A lot of them seem to be like generational.
They are.
Do that, yeah.
They are. And I mean, a lot of them aren't introducing their kids into it because they see what the future is.
They think it's a dying industry.
They do. And we can't afford to lose it. We really can't. And so, just get out there and support them. That's all I can say.
Well, Aaron, I can tell you're passionate about it, and I love it. I think it's important. That's why I wanted to have you on. For the people at home, for your personal business side, if somebody has some acreage that happens to listen to this and think, you know what, this fella's the kind of guy I need to help me get my timber right or help me grow that 154-inch deer, right. How can they get in touch with you?
Certainly. So I've actually got a number of ways. I have a website that I have for my business. It's www.bigcreekfandw and spelled out, of course, .com. I've got a number of ways you can contact me through the website itself, but, shoot me a text or give me a call, 706-833-4891. And, I'm super easy to talk to if you can't tell.
So Aaron, so just so people know, how far do you kind of span out from
Yes,
here?
Sir. So I'm registered in both the state of South Carolina and Georgia. Okay. So I will travel both states. If you're willing to work with me, I'm willing to work with you. Okay. And I will go just about anywhere. When looking for a professional to conduct forest management upon your property, I do highly recommend you find somebody who is a registered forester. When doing that, we take great pride in this state in protecting our industry and protecting the individuals who are considered to be professionals. And so, working with registered foresters is definitely is a must in my sense.
Right.
But most definitely, you can locate me through the Georgia Forestry Commission website. You can find me on the Landowners Association website. I'm pretty much anywhere. Type me in Facebook, Big Creek Forestry. I'm there. Okay. So, Big Creek Forestry and Wildlife, I'm the only one that's out there that's got the name. So pretty much anywhere you put me, you're going to find me.
Well, guys, Aaron, I appreciate you coming here and doing this with me. And guys, I appreciate y'all listening at home to this. If Aaron can help y'all with your property, please reach out to him. I love to connect people who somebody that's got a need and somebody that can handle it.
I appreciate it.
I think after this talk, y'all should pretty much well understand Aaron can handle it. So, yeah. But anyway, I appreciate everybody, and we'll see y'all next time.